When I started this video, it was June of 2021, and for a variety of life reasons, I kept shelving it, and just got so far behind on other work that I just ended up kind of putting that video on the back burner in perpetuity. I didn't know if I'd ever get around to finishing it, but finally I'm like giving myself a deadline, and it's like 8 months later. If anything, life's only gotten harder since I recorded this video. But I thought that I could go to that dark place and then come out on the other side and have some perspective. This just feels like one of the hardest months of my entire life. And I feel like I'm just pretending that everything's okay. And I don't know a punchline to make this funny or interesting or entertaining, but I do know that it's true. And if nothing else, maybe this one moment, just interrupting my own video to kind of be honest with you, I think it's worthwhile. I don't think it's a waste of time. And sure, things suck right now, but I think they could get better. I mean, what do I know? I just wish there was a clever joke or a way to kind of write this off, but I guess I just have to feel it. And if nothing else, I think this special gives us space to do that. And I think that's a good thing. Even if it does feel like it hurts at times. So I guess what I wanted to do with this episode is to let this art affect me, let it make me feel things, and then express to you what those things are that I'm feeling. To allow myself to be affected by the work, and then, especially because of its content, let you sit in that with me. Kind of be a bit ridiculously honest with you, because I do think this material hits extremely close to home for me, especially given last year. So I wanted to do that. I knew it would be uncomfortable, not only for me. I mean, you can already tell that I'm super uncomfortable in this space because I made this for myself. I've set myself up for this, and I know it's not going to be fun. I've created an environment where this is not going to be super enjoyable for me, but I hope in the end this feels like a worthwhile effort when I look at the final product and go, okay, it was good to say these things, get them out on camera, and to just do it. Because I do think Bo Burnham's Inside hits really close to home, and that's for a wide variety of reasons that I think will become apparent as we get deeper into this. But I couldn't help but being affected and kind of thinking back about 2 years ago, because I think that's when things started to shift for me, that things started to change for me. Because in June of 2019, I lost the first job I had out of college. The best way to explain that is part of my job there. It was the first time I lived away from home, the first time I lived apart from my parents, because I was close enough at college and would save money to stay at home and commute to school every day. But when it came time for this job, I had to move in order to do it. But a big component of that job was fundraising. I had to raise the money in order to do my job. Not only the resources and the money to get things so that way I could facilitate the job, but fundraising was a key aspect of it in order to be able to do the work to begin with. And to be frank, I wasn't very good at that. I think if you had asked me in 2019 how I'd felt in that moment, I would have been very bitter. I would have probably blamed other people. Because that's the easy thing to do. I think that's what we all do when we get into really uncomfortable situations, because we don't like to think of ourselves as the problem. Even me, and I have a lot of anxiety. I can't even stare directly at this camera while I do this. And so in June of 2019, I moved back home with my parents. because I lost my first job out of college because I wasn't good at raising money. And so I returned home, and I have to be honest, I felt like a failure. I felt like I'd failed myself. I felt like I'd failed all the people that relied on me. I felt like I'd ruined any chances at my life going the way I expected. And I drove home with one of my friends from college for my last day of work. We rode back together. I drove him back to our hometown of Birmingham. And I just unloaded everything on him. I just said, well, here's all my baggage. It's your problem now. And thank God he's a good person. Thank God he's a good human being. And he understood where I was coming from, because I think any other person in that moment would have just been like, dude, I don't want to hear about it. You're making way too big of a deal about this. It's not the end of the world. It's not. It wasn't. I'll be honest. The end of the world didn't happen then. It sure felt like it, at least for me. It felt the end of the world for me, not other people. Everyone else seemed to be moving on fine with their lives, and I was just like, oh, I have to hit the reset button. And because my brain works the way it does, I was like, oh, I'm hitting the reset button. I'm like 22, 23 at this point, and I'm hitting the reset button at 23. I didn't even get off the starting gun went off, and I like broke my ankle on the first step. That's how it felt like in the moment. I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know how to feel about that. And so I just kind of unloaded everything on him. And I was like, I blame this person, I blame this, I blame this, I blame this. And then by the end of it, after I'd let out all that steam, I was like, and most of all, I think I'm a terrible person, I hate myself, and I think I'm a complete failure. I just wish someone else had been there to make me less of a failure. Or to make it not feel as bad. And because my friend was wise, and because my friend was a good person, and because he's a good friend, he just sat there and took it. He just took it. I don't know how he's still my friend. I'll be honest with you. I don't know how he survived that we've had our share of awkward car drives before, but I don't think any car rides had ever been that angry, just full of rage and vitriol, and just honestly at the end of the day I was just lashing out at anything I could blame, because honestly I deeply felt already in that moment I knew I was the problem. I knew it was my fault, but I wasn't ready to say that yet. I wasn't ready to admit that yet. So I needed to yell and blame everything else, blame everyone else. And because he's a good person, he just sat there and let me unload everything on him. He didn't deserve that. Well, I'm sure he was thinking the entire car ride while I'm just screaming at no one, screaming at myself, honestly. He's just sitting there going, go see a therapist. And that was the awkward part. When I was working that job, therapy was built into it. Like I had a therapy session every single month. It was amazing. I loved it. It was probably the healthiest mentally I'd been in my entire life. And then I lost the job because of my fault. It was my fault. And then I lost that as well. And then now I don't have a job, so I can't afford to go see a therapist. And it's like, this is the time I need one. This is when I need one. How do I manage this? And my tactic was what it's always been, which is to just unload on other people, just to be a burden to other people. Say, oh, here's all my problems. They're yours now. It's not the intention, but I have to externalize things because I'm a verbal processor, if you couldn't tell already. I'm a verbal processor, and so I had to do something. I had to externalize all of it. But I function best when there's someone there to bounce my ideas off of, where he's like, okay, dude, relax. They don't deserve this. Or, yeah, actually, you're right. I think you deserve to be angry about this. I need someone to be there. For better or worse, probably worse, I need someone to be there. And what that means to me is I need a therapist. And instead of, doing that, obviously I couldn't afford it at that time. Instead of doing that, instead of getting a therapist and getting therapy and getting help, I make other people an armchair psychologist, an armchair therapist, and like, hey, what's your advice for this? It's your problem now because now you're going to be concerned for me. Great, another thing to worry about. So what do you do? What do you do when you have to reset your life at 23? What do you do when you have to revert back to what your life was like at college? Except now you don't have a regular schedule, you don't have classes to go to, you don't have a job, so you have no regulated schedule, you do whatever you want. And also you're really bummed out because the job that you loved is now gone. And you are having to completely just alter and uproot your entire life and move back in with your parents and mooch off of them. It doesn't feel good. And so from June until September of 2019 were some of the loneliest months I'd ever lived through. And I was applying for jobs left and right. I was trying anything and everything, just throwing whatever darts at the wall, whatever jobs my dad was connected to through his work, whatever networking he had. I was like, please give me that. I'll take this, I'll apply for this, blah, 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 blah. And it just kept not panning out. And then in September, I finally made the connection I needed to, and I got a job at a local school where I was teaching and then running some of the facilities. It wasn't super glorified work, but it was a job, and I actually felt like I was doing something with my time, and it felt like my time was valued again. It was creatively fulfilling because I was working in a theater at a local school. And then a couple months go by, I've worked several shows, I've made good relationships with the people that work there. In like February of 2020, I'm thinking back on the year I've just had. I'm like, wow, that was the worst year of my life. And then March of 2020 rolls around. We get called in for a school-wide assembly, and they announce that, hey, there's this new thing. It's called coronavirus, COVID-19 for short. It looks like it's a bit more serious than we initially thought. So what we're going to do is we're going to suspend school for the rest of the week, and we'll see you all back here on Monday morning, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And so we all went home, and then we never came back. And we were out of school until August. So from March until August, I had nothing to do. Everywhere was shut down. I couldn't leave my house. And suddenly the ideas of 2019 being the worst year of my entire life went up in flames. It's just like, gone. Wow. I didn't expect a sequel so soon to the worst year of my life, but sure, why not? Some tragic comedy, it must be entertaining to someone out there. So 2019 was kind of like a singular bad year for me, and sure, it was bad for plenty of other people. But for me, it was a very isolated bad year. And then 2020 was like that, but for everyone, but it also felt extremely isolated. So like everyone had a personally different, tailor-made bad year in 2020. I was seeing pretty much no one my age for an entire year. I saw one of my peers twice in 2020. And then for the rest of the pandemic, nothing. And then when I finally do go back to work in August, I'm only seeing students in high school, which here in 2021, I'm now 7 years out of high school, which is mind-numbing to me. So those aren't my peers. I can relate to them on some level, but realistically, I don't really know who or what they are. And we don't have the same like pop culture references to pull from, other than like the new stuff that's on television now, which I'm having a harder and harder time to keep up with, because I just keep watching the same stuff because it's the only thing I know how to do to handle like the dark loneliness inside of me. Like whenever I get sad, I just watch something that's comforting, watch something that's easy. In preparing to do this thing right now that I'm doing, what I did was watch a ton of cartoons. A ton of just fun, happy, beautiful cartoons that I knew would make me feel good, because I knew that I was just going to bum myself out doing this. That this would not be fun at all. 2020 hurt so much more because I was actually preparing to try again. And it's just like, no, get back down in your hole. How dare you think that you could possibly make another attempt at this? You failed. You failed at your one try to get out of the nest, and now you're just a crippled bird forever. I gotta be honest, when the pandemic first started, I knew it was gonna go longer than we initially thought. I didn't expect to turn 25 in the middle of a pandemic. My 24th birthday was the first birthday I had not seen my friends on in years. And then my 25th birthday rolled around. That was great. I loved every second of not being able to see people that I care about. Not being able to travel and feel safe. Because the thing is like, even as the world opens up, or even as things like start to become more acceptable, you could actually travel across state lines and go see people that you know, I would just, anytime I thought about it, my chest would tighten and I'd just feel bad. I had a bunch of panic attacks last year. It was delightful. There was a stretch of several months where I'd have a panic attack and then go get tested because I thought I couldn't breathe because I was having a panic attack. And because I couldn't breathe, I would work myself up even more because I'm like, oh God, I've got it. And I'm going to infect my entire family. And then someone I know, someone I love is going to die. And that was like every day for a year. We already had a huge mental health crisis in our country before this started. And now it's a natural disaster. We don't grasp the gravity of what we've just done to ourselves yet. I think the psychological damages of this pandemic upon a worldwide populace, we'll still be writing books about this 2 decades from now. And we'll still be studying people, trying to figure out all these different psychological issues that were birthed out of this. People who were probably completely fine before all of this, who had no mental illness, who had no problems, no history in their family of mental health issues, suddenly have an anxiety disorder, or a new neuroses, or a new issue with panic attacks or depression. I can't imagine how many new people are now dealing with the darkness that so many of us already were prior to this. The worst thing for me is that I finally felt like I got into it. Before I lost my job in 2019, I still had issues, but I felt like I was in a healthy place. Seeing a therapist helped a lot. That's why I tell people to go to therapy. And then 2019 was terrible. But those last couple months and the first couple months of 2020, before all of this, I felt like I was finally getting better. And I thought I was fine. But I realized in 2020, because I had a plethora of time to just be alone with my thoughts, is that, frankly, I didn't like who I'd become. I'm fine. I'm just not where I wanted to be 2 years ago. I'm fine. I'm not okay. And it's not like I think I'm a bad person. I think I have my issues like everyone does. But overall, I like to think the best of people. I do have bursts of anger, but I am pretty forgiving. And I try to be kind when I can. I try to go above and beyond when I can. And I don't always succeed. And sometimes that kindness is kind of a buffer that I put up. Because if I build up other people, I don't have to deal with my own personal issues, my own personal demons. I don't have to deal with the fact that I don't respect what I think. I don't have to deal with the fact that I don't think half the things I do are worthwhile. Because if I build up other people, I can focus on yes, being a cheerleader for the cool people, the people that I really like and who I've somehow swindled into being my friends. I don't want to be a burden. I don't hate myself. It's kind of like when you have a living arrangement with a roommate that you don't really like, or you don't really vibe with. You don't hate the guy, you just kind of hate the inconvenience. So you just both find ways to not take up the same space at the same time, to just navigate around each other. And in doing so, you never deal with the problem. Because eventually the problem does go away. One of you moves away. One of you just leaves. The problem is I can't do that. When I have my good days, I think, yes, that's who I aspire to be. Obviously a better version of this, but he's making progress. I like that. But on my worst days, I am nihilistic, I'm narcissistic, I'm self-involved, and I'm just a bummer to be around. And by being so meticulous about the few things that I do understand at all, I can seem a lot smarter than I actually am. And so I can put on a show and pretend hey, look, I know everything about movies. Let's talk about it. That's the only thing I know anything about. You ask me about the socio-political climate in Jamaica right now, I don't know. I don't know. I couldn't even begin to give you a guess. And so, if I pretend that everything's alright, I just put on a front and I just talk about things that are comfortable and easy and people are allowed to have differing opinions on, I can seem like an intelligent person. I can seem like I am creating a space where conversation and dialogue can happen about a variety of topics. But in reality, I'm creating a safe space, a space of comfort where I don't ever have to deal with anything. I don't ever have to deal with any of my issues. And pretty much all of my interactions with my peers over the course of an entire year weren't in person. They were over a digital space, over a Discord call, over a Zoom call. And that's not normal. That's not how things are supposed to be. Okay, that's right. The one thing I do know is that I genuinely do want to get better. I want to try. But I don't want to pretend like, I don't want to say, I think this year's going to be better than last year. Because I don't know. I really don't. It could be better, worse, on par. It looks like that might be the case. But I don't know. And everyone's years are different. I had an individually bad 2019. And we cumulatively had a terrible 2020. So this could be a bad year for you. Or it could be a pretty good one. We don't know. And we never do know until we get there. Well, what I do know is that we can choose how we react to it. We can choose how we respond. And that's something that I think is worthwhile keeping in mind. If you also want to get better, you have the chance, you have the space, you have the floor. You can reset, you can start back over. It's an option. So now that you have the space, what are you going to do with it? My uncle used to say, everyone gets the same 24 hours in a day. You can do what you want with yours. I'm going to use mine. And I've always liked that approach to life, the choice of how you individually are going to use your year, your day, your time. No one knows how much you get. No one knows how much you have left. And in a way that's kind of comforting, because you can pursue life with the same excitement every day. That it's a gift. It's a chance to do something different. It's a chance to change. It's a chance to start over, should you want to. And so I think I'm finally gonna just take my advice, and that is to get help. I think I'm gonna do it for myself. Not so that I can better myself for others, but so that I can feel better. And regardless of whether this year is another terrible one, or it's great, or just mediocre, I'd settle. I would give my arm for just a normal year, regardless of which one it is. I want to be better, so that way when it happens, whatever happens, I can handle it better, because we don't have to deal with it alone anymore. I genuinely do believe I am getting better now that things are now that things are changing. Now that we can go out in the world again, and I don't feel like my chest is going to implode. I feel like life is possible again for the first time in a long time. And it gives me hope. I mean, I'm even starting to see myself get better in areas that I felt were really bad last year. So I don't know what you're going to do with your year. I don't know how you spent last year, but last year everyone gets a pass. Everyone gets a blank check. You're fine. I don't know how you used your last year. If you found a productive way to help other people in the midst of a terrible, terrible worldwide crisis. Or you just sat on your couch and watched Netflix. I'm not judging you. I think I fall mostly in that latter category. So I really have no room to judge you. And no one really should. We all dealt with it the best we could. 2021 isn't going to erase the tragedy or the awfulness of last year. We don't get to start over with everything. And one of the things I think this particular piece of art does well is force you to sit in it. Now, it's not always funny. It's not always fun either. But it does something. It tries something and accomplishes, I think, its main goal, which is to force you to reckon with what last year meant for everyone and what the inside of some of our minds look like on a daily basis, but was even worse last year, regardless of how you spent last year. Whether you spent it balled up on a sofa crying and intermittently shoving cheese balls into your face in between the 20th binge through of The Office before it left Netflix, or you downloaded a new app and watched a ton of anime from Japan, or picked up your 17th book in a month, or you didn't read a book last year. There's room for all of us here. And I just want to say, you did it. You made it through. But you don't have to pretend like it didn't happen. Acknowledge it. To try and just put the past behind you and move on as if nothing's happened is a very unhealthy coping mechanism. I know that from experience now. And I don't want to repeat it again. I don't want to repeat the same mistake over and over again, because as they say, I don't know who actually said it, but the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. I'm sick of getting the same results, of just feeling bummed out all the time. So whatever 2021 brings, I hope it's a fresh start for you. I hope that you get to just have a clean slate, remember last year, and step forward into that bright new day that is outside. So regardless of where you find yourself in this moment, I want to remind you that there are resources to get help. And it's not just me saying this because I think I have to, it's me saying this because I think I should, and because you deserve it. You deserve to take good care of yourself. And wherever you find yourself on your journey this year, whether you hit the reset button for the 15th time and feel like a complete failure, know you're not alone, and that there's hope for all of us, and that we are all capable of change and making change in the world. So I don't know what you're going to do, but I look forward to seeing you all outside. Okay, I think that's good.
Goal? Hey kids, basketball is fun. But you know what isn't? Drugs.